how does it relate to your undergrad experience at Cal Poly?
That's a great question. So I'll give you kind of the whole backstory here. I always knew that I wanted to get into a sales role. Out of college, I was pretty competitive. I played baseball at Cal Poly. And I guess, track to get here was a little different than most. Like everyone on here, I went to the career fair my senior year. Obviously, it was a little bit different. It was in person, which is crazy nowadays to even think about. But I pretty much interviewed or tried to interview as many places as I could, which I obviously encourage everyone to do so because you're trying to figure out what you really want to do. But I knew I wanted to get into that sales role, be outside of the office, deal with high-level people, and staffing kind of gives you that. But it actually came down to Beacon Hill from one other company gave me final offer. And at the time, I was really impressed with Beacon Hill. For where I was living and what made sense for me at that time, I actually accepted a different role. It was a tough decision. I interviewed with Beacon Hill. I really was impressed with just the way they carried themselves, to be honest. Every other interview I had was pretty standard, which there's nothing wrong with that. They just kind of asked the typical questions, where Beacon Hill, I felt, was a little bit more personable, and they seemed like they had my best interest in mind. So when I made the decision to go somewhere else, it was pretty tough. But the corporate recruiter that I was dealing with at the time, for literally the whole next year, she kept in touch with me. Just once in a while, would reach out, give me a call, say, how you doing? Hope everything's well. And that kind of stuck with me, and no one else did that. Obviously, it's pretty rare to find a company that does that. But so after a year, I found myself kind of back in the job market. And like I mentioned, it was always in the back of my head that Beacon Hill was really professional and really, like I said, had my best interest in mind. So I actually reached back out to them at that point and said, hey, I'm back in the job market. Obviously, I went through the interview process. You guys gave me an offer. I said no, which is pretty tough. Like, I know this is a crazy thing to ask, but could I potentially interview again? And they didn't even hesitate, which they could have easily said no. They could have easily said, hey, man, we gave you that one shot and you didn't take it. Unfortunately, we're not going to do it this time. But I met with them the following week, basically went through the same interview process again, met everyone in the office. One thing led to another, and they extended an offer again. And a year later, after they gave me my first offer, I actually went back and accepted the second one, which is pretty rare. I don't suggest anyone do that. I don't think it's very common, but it just goes to show one of the main reasons that I did choose Beacon Hill is just the way they carry themselves. They were extremely personable, extremely helpful. I never felt pushed to make a decision one way or another. It was in line with what I wanted at school. I was doing business management. I knew I wanted to do sales. I knew I wanted to get into something competitive. So it all kind of fit the bill. And then a year later, here I am. So that's kind of my long story of how I got into this role.
To understand, like, our next question, right? We want to hear more about your specific role at Beacon Hill. If you guys caught this at the beginning, Ben and Kyle are currently in the same position, an account executive with our San Francisco tech team. So all have Ben walk through our first, like, our entry-level role as a staffing consultant where he started, and Kyle can walk through his role as an account executive. So do you want to kick that off, Ben?
Yeah, that sounds good. Like you just said, I'll kind of lead up to how we got to this role, and I'll let Kyle take the wheel on what we do in our current role. But they're pretty intertwined. So like Corinne just said, every single person that comes to Beacon Hill, whether it's for sales or recruiting or what have you, starts out in the recruiting role. And there's some big reasons for that. The main one is you really just can't be an account executive until you understand really what's going on with our industry. A lot of people don't really know much about it when they come in, which there's nothing wrong with. I didn't. But you're basically learning so much every single day the moment you step into the office that you need that time as a recruiter to pretty much build your foundation and build you up to that account executive role. So as a recruiter, boiled down, pretty much your day-to-day, you're working with a specific account executive to help them source the best possible candidate for the job that they're working on with the manager that they're in touch with. So you go ahead, you find that perfect candidate, and what's cool is you then turn into basically the main point of contact with them throughout their entire process of interviewing. So Once you find that candidate, you're on the phone with the manager and the account executive, pretty much selling your candidate in. That's really when the sales starts. It's just, hey, why does this person work? What skill sets do they have? And you're the one that's going to be answering those questions and communicating that too with your candidate. And then when they do go in an interview, you're going to be prepping them, debriefing with them afterwards, walking them through the whole process. So it's an extremely satisfying process when you find someone who really wants the job and they're a great fit for it, and you basically go through this process and they end up getting an offer and accepting it. It's a really cool feeling because you're putting someone in a great position where they want to be, and you basically facilitated the whole thing.
Perfect. So just to test, can you hear me okay off the bat?
You're good.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you guys for bearing with me. I apologize about that. My Wi-Fi has been a bit spotty out here. But yeah, so my role as account executive, my role essentially is to bring in new business and to manage any new and existing relationships with our clients. I also work really closely with the recruiters, kind of like Ben was mentioning, just to help drive their search efforts, making any adjustments or edits kind of as needed as it kind of comes up throughout the day. So under normal circumstances, I'd be, visiting clients at their office, meeting them for coffee or lunch or whatever it may be, maybe even grabbing a drink several times a week. But since that's not currently possible, I've been spending a lot of time just kind of speaking to them on the phone, touching base with them every month or so, because there is that relationship management aspect of it where even if there's no business at the time, you just kind of want to catch up with them, see how they're doing, how's their family doing, what vacations they have planned, all that kind of stuff. So that's been the bulk of my job recently. I will be honest, there is a good deal of kind of cold calling and cold emailing in this role, especially as you're getting started. But to this day, getting a potential client on the phone and being able to set that meeting, by far one of the most rewarding feelings. We actually had a little bell in the office that we would ring every time we set a meeting, and everyone would just kind of fire up for you. And it's a really, really good kind of atmosphere we had just to drive those cold calling efforts.
What is the training like? So again, I'd love to hear from each of you on training. I know Ben can it's very similar, but Ben can touch on like the recruiting training and Kyle can touch on the differences when you start to train for sales. So do you want to go, Ben?
For recruiting, kind of like I mentioned earlier, the first couple of weeks, just like in any job, it's a lot of absorbing information. It's new, it's fresh, and you're kind of drinking through a fire hose, if you will, for the first couple of weeks, but people are there to help you along the way. The training really doesn't ever stop. The first couple of weeks, you're watching training tutorials, you're sitting in with managers, to understand, how they operate, how they react, because everyone has their own little nuances of how they do this job and how they recruit. And you're really just listening to a lot of people that are sitting around you. That I think is one of the most effective ways in shadowing other employees and coworkers in the office or over the phone right now when working remotely. The great thing I like about the training here is they don't really waste time getting you into the job. Obviously, they're helping you along the way, the first couple of weeks, first couple of months, so on and so forth. But they hold you a level of accountability pretty quickly. So by the end of week 1, week 2, you're working on your own positions by yourself, which can be a little bit stressful, but it's fun because, you're not having your hand held for a long time. They're just like, hey, we hired you for a specific reason. We're going to help you get to where you want to be, but get after it. Go start recruiting, go start talking to people, and have some fun. And that's why you're here, which I do love about, I think everyone that's competitive, that's really what they're searching for.
Yeah, absolutely. So for sales, it is going to be quite a bit of role playing just to kind of understand the basics, mostly when it comes to how to cold call and also how to run a sales meeting. And so for a while, I was actually meeting with my manager and some other salespeople in the office, probably 2 to 3 times a week. Just to go over the various scripts and kind of understand the nuances that come with the role. In addition, I was also shadowing my manager for a couple months, and that allowed me to actually go sit in on all of his meetings. And so not only was it really nice to get out of the office and just kind of see firsthand how to run a meeting, but my manager would also actually take it one step further and actually break down the meeting with me after. Just want to understand why he answered certain questions a certain way or try to present some information in a certain way, et cetera, et cetera. So once I received my promotion, actually the training didn't stop, kind of like Ben mentioned. So my manager still sometimes sits in on some of my meetings just to offer any feedback on how I ran it. And kind of like I touched on earlier, sales can just be such a nuanced position that having someone experienced who's available to kind of analyze the details, especially some small things that you might not have picked up on, it's extremely, extremely helpful when you're starting out just to make sure you're not overlooking anything.
about career growth, what it looks like for you. So I know, again, it's similar, but Ben, we'll have you start off on that one.
Yeah, totally. So, like you kind of mentioned, obviously, Kyle and I are both in the technology division. So, we started off as that recruiter to account executive growth path. One thing that I really liked starting out as a recruiter is they know you're there for sales. So, day one, the goal is to get you into sales. It's just to build the foundation, like I said earlier. So, I was promoted into sales a year after I started. One thing that I really enjoyed about it is you quickly become like a hybrid role, like Corinne was just saying. It doesn't take you a long time to begin meeting with managers, to begin doing that hybrid sales role. When you fully get into that sales role, that obviously that recruiting side takes a step back, but it's great that you're able to do both at the same time and work that full desk because it gives you a higher sense of accountability. You're working 100 miles an hour, which is awesome. And you feel really good about setting meetings, helping candidates get jobs, and doing the whole gamut of the work. What I love about Beacon Hill is if you tell them you want to get somewhere, they're going to get you there. So in terms of career growth for us, we go from account executive. The next step would be a senior account executive, and then be getting into management. It's they lay it on the line. They're going to be completely honest with you about where you are, how long it's going to take you to get there, which I really like. There's no gray area. They're going to tell you up front. And like Corinne said, if you want to work hard, you're going to have massive success here. And it's really up to you, which is great.
Yeah, I love that. Candidates want to ask too, right? When we talk about that, the offices, the locations that do the recruiter to sales track, how long? Of course, it's one of those, it depends. The average is 8 to 12 month time frame, but we've had people do it sooner. We've had people do it a little bit later, right? As Ben said, it's not going to be this ominous goal in the distance. We'll talk about it someday. Your manager is there to work with you, to get you to your goals, to set a time frame, and to get there. So it's a very open, transparent, like ongoing conversation, which I think all of us loved. When you're so motivated of what's the next step, you want to have that rapport with your manager.
Yeah, absolutely. So similar to Ben, I also started out as a recruiter back in July of last year, and actually moved into sales back in March. So as you can see, that's about that 7-8 month time frame they're talking about, which maybe kind of seems kind of long when you're in the thick of it, but kind of from looking back right now, it's a pretty quick time frame that they have, and they are really aggressive with their growth model, which is something I really like. Obviously every office is going to be different, and it kind of depends where you land. But at least with San Francisco, they were really looking to build up their sales team and just kind of expand their presence in the Bay Area, since we are, fairly new to the area still. And so that's something I really loved about the company, was that they were so focused on that growth mindset. And another thing that still kind of keeps me here and keeps me excited is, like Ben and Corinne were mentioning, is there are those opportunities to get into leadership and management. And I know from talks with my boss, they're looking at opening up new offices and kind of changing how we do our reporting structure and that kind of thing. So having that ability to kind of grow into these roles and then constantly changing what they have available is something that I love about the company, and it really keeps me excited about working here.
Yes, I love it. I always tell candidates, promotions here are merit-based. It's not about who's next in line, who's been there the longest. We have people on our teams that have gone from staffing consultant to division director. It is there for you. The opportunity is yours for the taking, whether you want to be an individual contributor and have great relationships with your candidates or your clients. Maybe you want to be in management. We've got a need for it all. We've got room for it all. And your manager is there to work with you on that, get you there. So I'd love to hear that. On a lighter note, you guys have kind of sprinkled things in, but would love to hear, what is your favorite part of your job when it comes to the day-to-day?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd probably say my favorite part of the job is just meeting different managers. I think that's still what draws me to the job, which is kind of what Kyle just said. That's why I wanted to be here. That's exactly what my goal was coming into the job. And like I mentioned before, I made that very clear. They understood that. That's what they hired me for. And so they're not going to hold me back. They're going to push me to get to that spot and keep going. So you're constantly moving, learning, evolving, understanding different companies. So similar to what I said in the recruiting role.
Yeah, so kind of from a broad sense, first of all, I really do love the culture that we've created in our office. As someone who commutes every day, I got to take BART. It takes me about an hour to get to the office. The last thing I'd want is to, just dread the place I'm going. And I'm lucky that I can honestly say that that's really not the case. Aside from listening to great music in the office all day and, the stimulant and the supply of coffee, of course, the upbeat atmosphere we have is something I generally like look forward to going to and being a part of every day.
I would love to hear from you guys your favorite office or Beacon Hill at large tradition.
I'm sure many people would say this if you talk to anyone from our company, but Boston, the annual trip is by far my favorite thing that we do as a company. So for a couple of reasons, honestly, basically they take everyone in the company and they fly them out to Boston, which is where we're headquartered, right before Christmas time for like 3 or 4 days. And they basically pack full one single hotel, and everyone there is from Beacon Hill. So you get to take a +1 if you want to. You get on a plane with your whole office and you fly across the country. Obviously, we're in San Francisco, so that was what we did. But it is just such an awesome way to celebrate everyone's hard work and dedication over the last year, especially going into the holidays. Everyone's in a good mood. You show up to Boston, it's just a very holiday good time city, which is great. So there's a couple things that they rent out restaurants, they rent out bars for you to do during the day. They really let you do what you want to do, which I think is great, because they're not like, hey, you have to show up to meetings for 10 hours a day. When you come to Boston, they're like, hey, you worked hard all year. This is your time to really just sit back and enjoy and realize why you're on this company, why you're on your specific team. And it's a great way to meet everyone too across the country. I don't know a lot of companies that you're able to meet people from every single office across the country and hop on a plane and go to Boston. And you're also there too. One of the nights is basically this massive convention celebrating everyone's hard work, but two, celebrating the individuals that reach basically the pinnacles of what we do. So there's specific goals and prizes you can win throughout the year based on how you perform it. And typically we always have at least a few people hit those, which is really cool. But it's like a full-on concert. Like there's someone narrating it, there's music playing, you get to see your coworkers walk across the stage. They get a customized bottle of Dom Perignon. Everyone's excited. You have a steak and lobster dinner. Everyone's dressed to the nines, wearing suits and dresses. It's just a really cool atmosphere.
Yeah. So I don't want to be redundant and go over Boston again. It's no doubt one of the coolest things about the company. I'm sure we could talk all day just kind of sharing stories about the times that we've done. But I want to focus on something a bit smaller scale and something that I think is pretty unique to our office, which are the mini competitions that we actually host. And so every now and then we'll get a new email just kind of detailing a new competition. And, you know, it could be among the sales team. It could be between sales and recruiting. We'll even do some between other offices within our same region. The competitions are typically going to focus on some of our main KPIs. So things like setting meetings or generating new leads, getting subs to roles, that kind of things. But I love the fact that Beacon Hill is just so willing to reward its employees for a job well done. The rewards are typically going to come in the form of half days or extra PTO. And trust me, nothing can reinvigorate you during a long week like the promise of a little bit of time off.
Ask you both to describe your Beacon Hill experience so far in one word.
I'd probably say satisfying.
Hey, how about you, Kyle?
Yeah, at the risk of giving a synonym here, I would have to go with rewarding. So just from a broad sense, this is a role that I actually find to be deeply rewarding. I mean, you're finding people new jobs and new careers. And on the other side of the coin, you're helping your clients by saving them a ton of time and energy. So the people we work with, you know, they're incredibly busy, and the last thing that they want to be spending a lot of time on is just trying to fill, you know, an open position or a need that they have on their team.
But, you know, it's really rewarding when you close a deal, when you make a sale, when your commission check is growing. That's because you just got somebody a job. You just got a manager, a new employee that they're stoked about. It's a really good feeling to see the wins all around. So thanks for running through that, both of you guys. I wanted to address, at that note, sometimes candidates will ask, why do companies use a staffing firm? Don't they have internal teams? So just wanted to briefly run through that question for you guys. So for Beacon Hill, we work with clients from Fortune 500 companies through startups. We connect with clients in various industries. Could be real estate, nonprofit, law firms, financial services, marketing and advertising agencies, just to name a few. So we take on the burden as a company on the risk of a full-time employee, as these temporary or contract candidates are being paid through Beacon Hill on our W-2. So we do everything. If a candidate needs unemployment or benefits, that comes through Beacon Hill. So that's also why, as a staffing consultant, when you're the recruiter, you are continuously communicating with your candidates on assignment because you're kind of like their manager or their HR representative. You're giving them updates, you're giving them feedback. We have the great conversations of extending them an offer. We also have the tough ones of maybe letting them know their position is ending, right? So you're doing everything in between. And just to go through a few examples of a temp or contract placement, I know I mentioned some of our different divisions. So for example, our associates division, they tend to see more short-term contracts in their day-to-day. They could receive a call in the afternoon from a client who tells us that their front-end receptionist has left for a sick day. They need somebody to cover maybe 1 to 2 days starting that next morning, right? So our staffing consultants will find them a person to fill that very short-term assignment. On the other end, technologies, the team that Ben and Kyle are with, also Beacon Hill Financial or Life Sciences divisions, we tend to see longer contracts, average between 3 to 6 months, could be 1 year, could be just an ongoing contract that's always renewed. So given the nature of those kind of candidates and their specialized skill sets, clients look to Beacon Hill to find the most qualified people who have the skills, who have the bandwidth to jump right into a project and to do it in a really short amount of time. So there's a ton we could share about our jobs, our positions, and that's why I did want to open the floor to our Q&A. Again, that's on the right-hand side of your screen. If any of you had any questions come up, things you want to hear more about, please go ahead and put that in there. We're happy to answer those. While I wait to see if any questions roll in, just to kind of reiterate, going forward, we are in the thick of our campus recruiting season. So for those of you interested in applying or hearing more, I'm the first step. So reach out to me directly. As soon as we exit this, you will get a survey, and that's going to have my email address. I know most of you I reached out to via LinkedIn. That's a great way to reach me, or send me an email directly. We are hiring across all divisions in multiple locations for our entry-level sales and recruiting positions. Some offices, depending on where they're at timing-wise, could make offers as early as November for May, June 2021 grads. So for those of you, depending on where you're at in your timeline, we definitely want to get in touch, get the ball rolling. I'm very excited to connect with you guys. Looks like we have a question coming in here. How has the environment of the staffing industry changed since COVID-19 and working remote? I know on the front end, all of us love the energy of our offices, the environment, right? It kind of lights that fire in you when you get in the morning. So of course, we're from home, depending on the teams, right? Depending on the city and your regulations, it could look different. But we are from home. What's great is that we are fully able to do our jobs, to connect with candidates and clients. So that's awesome, right? And as an industry, of course, we felt the effects. I don't think there's any industry that hasn't. But what's been great hearing, all the way from the top down at Beacon Hill is how we're going to separate ourselves during this time. We're going to be the ones constantly checking in with our candidates. We're going to be the ones following up with clients, even if they don't have business. We're going to go that extra mile to really set ourselves apart. But I'll kick it, Ben, if you want to share. I know you kind of did briefly, maybe how your job looks different now versus when we were in person to being remote.
Yeah, totally. And I think you kind of touched on a couple points there. Like you said, we felt the effects of it. I don't think any company didn't. For a while there, it was like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going to happen. Like everyone was a little confused, but just like everyone else, we just kind of adapted. Everyone obviously is working from home now. And like you mentioned, you turn, at least in the sales role, a little bit more to being that personable relationship to where that person just feels like they can talk to you. It's kind of a long-term business strategy, not necessarily working on, hey, do you have business right now? It's, hey, I know everything's crazy, but I'm your go-to person. I want to be there for you when it's good, when it's bad, and building that relationship in the long term. So when we do come out of this, we're able to, we already are acquainted. I understand your team. I understand what you'd be looking for if you were hiring in a normal market. And so it doesn't really change in a huge sense. It's just playing a little bit more of a long-term game. But I will say there's obviously companies that are being extremely successful right now where COVID hurt some companies. You find places where COVID didn't really have as much of an impact in the hiring process or with the different managers and layoffs and so forth. So you have to get a little bit more creative, but I would say we just kind of adapted, and you change up your business model a little bit, and then you go back to work. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your meetings are via WebEx.
Yeah, that's pretty much, you don't get coffee anymore. You send them a WebEx link and you just do this, which is totally fine.
Yeah, no, I love it. Somebody else asked, I feel like I kind of brushed on this and we all kind of gave tidbits. What does a typical day in the office look like? I'll take it as kind of like, environment, atmosphere, before the virtual world. So again, each office might look different. I know this is kind of a highlight of our San Francisco team, but a lot of Caly Poly people tend to head up to the Bay Area. So Kyle, I'll let you give a little overview, like what was our office like or your average day, whatever you want to touch on before we were virtual.
Sure, absolutely. Well, first of all, can you hear me okay? I know my sound was cutting in.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Perfect. So first of all, you walk in, there's always music in the office. Everyone's filling up with their cups of coffee, kind of like I mentioned earlier with the atmosphere. We all sync up at 8 o'clock on the dot for our morning zone, which is just kind of where we go over our open positions, interviews coming up, see where the candidates kind of stand, that kind of thing. And then after that, everyone's pretty much touching base with their account executive, just to see, what roles they're working on, any details, any updates from the previous day. And then aside from that, as an AE in the role, I'm on the phones a lot of the day. I'm trying to cold call, set meetings. But aside from that, I'm also out of the office a lot, meeting with clients, talking to them, touching base. So that's kind of the two, prongs of the role, is trying to bring in the new business, but then also managing the business I already have, and then also kind of working with the recruiters just to really bring forward the recs.
Yes, love it. And that's like my biggest thing in the office. I'm just like, energy. But while being remote, we are constantly in touch. We are always in touch with your manager, your team. We've done virtual happy hours. Some teams have been able to do social distance meetups. We want to foster that sense of, community as best as we can, which has been really great. And I know I saw one more question, someone asking, what sets you guys apart from other staffing firms, which I love. And that was something, I don't know about you guys. I did my research. I interviewed all around as many agencies as I could talk to. I encourage candidates to get involved with as many interviews as possible to find the right fit. For me, Beacon Hill, it was the opportunity, how genuine they were, and just the transparency I felt in the interview process. Everyone I met was like, hey, let me tell you about our job, our industry. Here's where we see you fitting. Here's where we see you growing. Like, what do you think? Right. And I felt like they really talked about it in the long term. I wanted to find a company, people say, oh, your first job, you're only going to stay there 6 months, maybe a year, right? All of us, we passed the mark, but I was like, no, I want to grow somewhere. I want to know that they are hiring me with the intention of me succeeding and being promoted and growing with their team. And I think that's the thing with Beacon Hill. And when they talk to candidates, they want to ask you, what are your long-term goals? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What kind of job are you doing? So I love just the transparency through the interview process. They really tried to get a feel for like, are you going to be an awesome fit for our team? And are we going to be a great home for you to start your career? So I just love that personal touch when I was interviewing. I saw another question, just like company culture, atmosphere, specifically for San Francisco, which I know a lot of us can speak to. Like, is it, everyone right out of college? I love that we have people in different stages of their career. Ben himself, right? He did a whole nother job for his first year out of college and then came to Beacon Hill. We have people who are years out of school, right? I love it because we have experienced managers. We have people who've been in the industry for years. Most of them actually came from other staffing agencies. They wanted to build something new. They wanted to have a say in what they were doing. They were really excited to build something from the ground up. So you have experienced managers that are coaching you and training you. And then you have peers that are in a similar stage in their career or their life. So you kind of have that like partner to go through things with, which I love. And just, kind of a side note on that, we also have a mentor program at Beacon Hill. So any new hire will be matched with somebody in their same division in a different location who's more senior level. So you just have an even extra outside person who's not in your team, not your manager, to talk with as you're learning, as you're training, as you're growing in the role. So we love that too, whenever I can touch on culture. But I think that was most of the questions. I'm just checking through to see if any more roll in. But again, I'll be available. I would love to chat with anyone who was on this panel today. Again, I mentioned you guys are going to get my email. That is the best way to reach me. So just an extra thank you to Ben and Kyle for joining. We loved hearing from you guys. And I'm really excited to connect with everybody and tell you more about Beacon Hill. Hope you have a good rest of the week.